Hello everyone and welcome to Motorcyclegear.com. Today we're talking about the 5 things that we don't like about the 2026 Triumph Speed Twin 1200. Welcome back everyone. We are back out here in Southern California. I am on a 2026 Triumph Speed Twin 1200. I do have Mike with me. He is on a Triumph Tiger Sport 800. We do have videos on that bike as well, so be sure to check them out. But before we dive into this video, I do want to take a moment to give a big shout out to all of our partners for supporting our channel and helping make these videos a possibility. And of course, I do want to give a big thank you to Triumph as well for hooking us up with this 2026 Triumph Speed Twin 1200 for review. Now, if you're not familiar with our bike review series, they do all come in a 3-video format. The first video being a full review, which does feature first ride impressions, specs, overall review, and of course the answer to 2 questions: is the bike worth buying, and if we would buy the bike with our own money. The second video is going to be the 5 things that we like about the bike, and the third video, in this case this video, we're going to talk about the 5 things that we don't like about this bike. So let's go ahead and jump into the 5 things that we don't like about the 2026 Triumph Speed Twin 1200. Alright, so number 1 on the list, and I will say that this one is purely subjective, but my OCD really is struggling with this one, and that is going to be the gauge on this bike. If you, like me, notice the super small details, you will notice that the gauge is just slightly off center. Not a ton, but it was enough to bother me, and multiple times while just cruising, my brain would just stop and notice it, and then think about it, and then keep thinking about it, and then keep thinking about it. So not sure why Triumph chose to do this. Why not simply put the gauge in the middle where you expect it to be? But you know, it is what it is. Now, to be fair, I did warn that this was purely subjective. During this review, I was joined by Mike, as I just mentioned here a second ago, and he was not bothered by the gauge being off to the side. He even stated that stuff like this normally he notices and it normally bothers him, but in this case it simply didn't. So again, not a huge deal, but I did want to point it out, and I will say if it does make the top 5 list of things that we don't like about this bike, well then this bike is doing pretty good if that's going to be, you know, one of our complaints. Let's go ahead and move on to number 2 on the list of 5 things that we don't like about the Speed Twin, and this one again is going to be tied to the gauges, and it is once again subjective. This bike features a new single gauge that does feature some of the classic look and styling while still providing the rider with some modern digital tech, and from that perspective, you know, looking strictly at features and functionality, there really isn't anything wrong with this gauge. But since this is a classic looking bike, a bike that is invoking some of the legendary looks of the past, I personally much prefer the classic looking dual gauge setup that many Triumph classics have rocked over the years. I know Mike agrees with me on that, so definitely a classic look that I feel like Triumph should have stuck with. So, you know, I feel that lately Triumph has done so many things well, but I do feel that, you know, an area of improvement for them could be their gauges. We totally could have gotten a classic 2-gauge setup here, one that does have some analog touches, but that then still fills the features that we're looking for from, you know, those modern tech pieces that riders really have kind of gotten used to these days. But it still could have had that 2-gauge setup, that classic look that obviously Triumph is known for. So I do understand if this choice was made strictly from a cost perspective, but if it wasn't and it was strictly a style choice, then I think that they made the wrong one. Again, Mike does agree with me here that this one works and looks good, but we do prefer that more classic dual gauge setup. But again, you know, he wasn't as bothered by it as I was, so again, fairly subjective, could just be a complaint of mine. Definitely plenty of pep on this bike, really enjoying the pickup here. Alright, so moving on to number 3 on the list of 5 things that we don't like about the 2026 Triumph Speed Twin, and yes, it is once again going to be subjective. Again, this goes to show how good this bike actually is, that this 5 things video is primarily subjective versus actual faults, so that's a good thing to say that this bike is obviously really good. All right, let's keep on moving here. So number 3 is the seat. The seat isn't uncomfortable or anything like that. My issue with the seat is primarily the shape of it. It's going to be, it's the fact that it's, you know, long and flat and it doesn't have any sort of a curvature to it. We keep hitting all these red lights, but they turn green pretty quickly, so I can't complain. I would love to see some sort of a curve towards the end of it, towards the back of the seat, because I really felt like whenever I was being a little bit more spirited, that I found myself sliding a tad on the seat, and almost, I know I wasn't even close to the end of it, but you get this kind of feeling of like sliding off the back. So having a little bit of a curve to it would make me feel just a little bit more planted, perhaps. Once again, Mike, you know, rode the bike as well. He said he was not bothered by it, but I think it does come down to, you know, to riding style. Just love just taking off with this thing. It's definitely got plenty of power. Really good kick to it. So, you know, I think it really comes down to riding style. I'm much more of a sport naked kind of a rider, and Mike is much more of a classic and vintage bike type of rider, which usually has this long flat seat, so I guess it makes more sense that he's more used to it than I am. But again, not a bad seat by any means, just something that I think, you know, takes getting used to depending on the type of seat that you normally have on the bike that you ride, you know, every day. So again, totally subjective, but just in my opinion, I wish the seat wasn't fully flat. I wish it had just a little bit of curve to it. I think that would make it just a little bit better. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into number 4 on the list of 5 things that we don't like about the 2026 Triumph Speed Twin. And this one I think is a real complaint. In fact, I think the next 2 are real complaints. So number 4 here is the fact that this is the base model and not the RS version of the Speed Twin. In fact, it is the fact that as much as we like this bike, it's really hard to love this bike while knowing that there is a RS version available. So here's the thing. If this bike was in a vacuum on its own, we would say it is a great bike and a bike that we would love, granted, you know, while putting up with a few things, you know, that we would fix. For example, the, you know, lack of the quick shifter, but that's just the thing. The RS version does exist and it also gives you a quick shifter. So again, it makes it hard to love this bike when we know that the RS version is there. Keep in mind that at the time of this recording, the RS version at $17,195 is only $1,800 more than the base model, and you definitely get more than $1,800 worth of upgrades, easily justifying paying more for the RS. So for example, you get the bidirectional quick shifter that we just talked about, you get fully adjustable suspension, including Öhlins at the rear, you get upgraded Brembo Stellima brakes, and of course, the higher spec tires as well. So again, not to say that this bike is bad by any means, but after experiencing the buttery perfection of Triumph's quick shifters on some of their other bikes, we really missed it here on this base model, and you know, that's not even touching the other upgrades that you get by going with the RS. So again, really hard to love this version of the bike, don't get me wrong. We still really enjoyed it, but in reality, we really wanted to be on the upgraded RS variant instead, because of all the things and all the upgrades that the RS variant has to offer. So definitely something that is a complaint, because again, if you were to buy this bike, it would just be a mistake not to pay the extra $1,800 and get all the upgrades that are definitely worth more than that $1,800. But anyway, I digress. Okay, so rounding out the list at number 5, and this one's a real pain here. This is going to be the kickstand, or better yet, the placement of the kickstand. Mike was the first to ride this bike, and when we pulled over for the first time, he complained that he absolutely could not find the kickstand anywhere. And I remember thinking to myself, like, dude, it can't be that hard. Like, it's in basically the same place like it is on most bikes. Like, you just look down, and if you can't feel the kickstand, just look down, and it's going to be literally right there. Like, what are you complaining about? But then I rode the bike, and the first time we stopped, I thought the same thing. I remember going, oh, wow, he wasn't kidding. I can't feel it. I can't see it. Where is this kickstand? Like, this makes no sense. You know, this is one, you know, that we just fully agreed on, as it's just kind of positioned in a weird place. The kickstand is just so perfectly positioned that it is partially hidden by the exhaust, and the rest of it falls directly underneath the peg, so you just can't see it unless you really move around looking for it. And when you're sitting on the bike, unless you're really specifically like ducking your head down and looking around, you just can't see the kickstand. So, you know, I don't know, maybe if I'm not sure, you know, if I own this bike and I had it for a while, if I would just get used to it after a while, get used to that kickstand location, and then I would be okay with it. But as people who move from bike to bike for reviews, we spent about 300 miles on this bike, and it was just not long enough to get used to the location of the kickstand. And, you know, we've spoken to a few different people about this this bike, and they've all kind of agreed, yeah, the kickstand's kind of hard to find. So I don't know, just something to think about, something to know as you're looking at this bike. And again, we do review quite a few bikes, and you know, so far this year, I can't think of a single other bike where the kickstand was this badly hidden. So just putting that out there. All right, so guys and gals, that's going to be it for our list of 5 things that we don't like about the 2026 Triumph Speed Twin 1200. Again, a fairly nitpicky and subjective list, so I think that does speak volumes about how good this bike actually is, but still things that we wanted to bring to your attention if you were considering picking one up. With that said, be sure to visit Motorcyclegear.com for all your moto gear needs. We would love to help you out. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, let us know by hitting that like button, and of course hit that subscribe button as well so you do know when our next video comes out. We are constantly working on new motorcycle review videos as well as moto gear review videos, and growing this channel's audience would go a long way in helping us continue to do that. As always, thank you for watching. Till next time.